Hey everybody, it's Ian. It's time for another episode of Native Film Talk. I had a pleasure to speak with Angelique Midthunder and Stacey Rice, who work for Midthunder Casting. It's a casting agency that specializes in, one of their specialties rather, in hiring Native talent, finding Native talent. And I had a great conversation today to ask questions like, is it really hard to find Native talent? What is it like casting Native people? You know, we kind of go over Pretendians a little bit. Is it really not possible for you to ask if somebody's Native? Like, what does that dynamic look like? How do we get to a point where we have people that can go out and just say, yeah, I'm Native, and they get these Native roles? How do we still today continue to have people cast people that the Native people know aren't Native, but they go on and play Native people in Native roles that should be really for Native actors? Why do we continue to see that? And really just talk about the ins and outs. Also, as a mother and a mother and a spouse to a Native actor, what's that like? Her husband is David Midthunder. He is in Longmire. He is also Mortal Kombat 11. He's the likeness for Nightwolf. He's the freaking badass. Hopefully I can get him on the podcast soon, but her daughter is Amber Midthunder, and she recently was in The Ice Road, the Liam Neeson, Martin Sensmeyer film that just came out on Netflix. So she does have a lot of experience in the industry. She's been in the industry for a long time, since the 90s, been a casting agent for a long time. She has her company, Midthunder Casting LLC, and I think it's just a great conversation that I think it taught me a lot. I'm trying to grow and evolve my perspective. I talked to a few Native actors, I talked to a stuntman, I talked to a costume designer, and now I'm trying to talk to, a casting director, a casting agent, and I would like to eventually get to Native writers and Native directors and just get the whole perspective of like, where are we today? Where are we going? And where do you see us going in the future? What does the future look like? What do you hope it looks like? And I think a big thing that Angelique helps me and you all understand is the future is very, very bright. She worked on Reservation Dogs. She helped cast some of the Native actors on Reservation Dogs. And she talks about her journey going on the road with Sterlin Harjo all across Oklahoma to try to find some Native talent. And one of the four that is the key recurring characters in Reservation Dogs is someone who is from Oklahoma, has zero acting experience. And from what I understand, that's what you work for, to find brand new talent that nobody's ever heard of. And it's awesome. Like a Sladen Peltier. Like I like from Indian Horse, if you don't remember. But, to find somebody like that who has zero acting experience but is just a diamond in the rough, who nobody would have ever found had they never gone to your casting call, but they did, and now they're a superstar. Now they're amazing. Now everybody wants them to work on their movies. And so Angelique tells some great stories about how she got into casting and how she continues to be known as the one to get stuff done, and also what it's like to just do that work. It's something I never considered, is like the casting agent can only do so much. They can only lay it out and give it to the director or the producer and say, here you go, here's who we found. It made me really think my stance of like, maybe have been plenty of opportunities where there is accurate Native representation. There are Native characters that are vetted and are like, I think this would be a great fit for this role. They present it to the director, producer, and they don't go for it because that's not who they want to work with. Maybe they have familiarity with other people who are non-Native, and they're like, they're ethnically ambiguous. That's close enough. Let's do that. Yes, you did find a Lakota person for this Lakota role, but we want to go with this person that's ethnically ambiguous because we have comfortability with them. We work with them. The director vouches for them. The producer knows them very well. They like what they've done in the past, and they want to continue to see them. Or they have more star power. They're going to bring more attention to our feature film, to our TV show, whatever it is. I think it's real interesting to just hear her talk. So I'm going to shut up now and just go ahead and let you listen to the interview. August 9th, everybody. Reservation Dogs. Get excited. Everybody go see it. All right. For real now. I'm going to shut up. Y'all have a good one. Well, thank you for listening again to another episode of Native Film Talk. Today, I have Angelique Midthunder, and joining with her is Stacey Rice, her associate. So, Angelique Midthunder, I actually got connected with her because of her husband, David Midthunder, who's an actor in roles like Longmire. He was cast as the appearance, the likeness of Nightwolf in Mortal Kombat 11, the video game. But he reached out to me through my website and was like, "Hey, I've listened to your show. I really like it." And we exchanged emails back and forth. And he was like, "My wife is a casting agent, and my daughter, Amber Midthunder, is also in the industry. I think you should talk to my wife." And, I think you guys would hit it off and have a great conversation. So I brought on Angelique because she runs Midthunder Casting LLC. And really, I wanted to get her take on the state of things with native casting. She did prominent casting jobs for shows like Reservation Dogs most recently, and there are others that we'll talk about later. But yeah, I just wanted to bring you on, Angelique, and really impressed with everything you've done, even your stunt work, which at some point I'd like to talk about. I think is pretty awesome. It's pretty badass. But yeah, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay, well, hi Ian, I'm Angelique Midthunder.
Nice. How did you get involved in casting?
Oh gosh, okay, I'll give you the abbreviated version if I can.
Nice.
I just kind of fell into the film industry. I had seen a casting call back it was in the 90s, but it was in the newspaper actually. And I didn't know what a casting call was, but it said like, woman 20s, long dark hair, ride a horse, whatever. I was like, that's definitely me.
That's awesome.
So I went to it. I was a horse person. I totally thought it was going to be like working at a ranch or at a racetrack or something like that. And when I was a casting call, it was like they were like greeted me with a piece of paper and they were like, memorize these lines, and I was like, but why? And so anyway, so I did that and I got the part, and it was for a native role. I had never met a native person before in my life.
Oh, wow.
Stacey, you don't know this story. I don't think I've ever shared this with you. I had never even met a native person in my life. I'm from Florida. I happened to be house sitting in New Mexico at the time in Santa Fe. And it's just one of those things that happened. I did the role. I met my husband on that job. It was my
No
first time I
kidding.
had ever even been on a movie set. Met my husband in like buckskin, my hair in two braids, a choker. It was like,
Oh,
and
wow.
he was like, "What tribe are you?" And I was like, "I no, don't. What is a tribe?" And I mean, it was an eye-opening experience, of course. And I mean, it changed my whole life. Everything that I know about Native Americans is from I just fell in love with him, married him, and now I'm like been immersed in the family and the community, the greater film community, but also like our family and the community that I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico, indigenous community for 25 years now. So, that was like, I learned so much from then. But the fact that I had never even met a Native American person before is just, I think at least it gives me an understanding of like when I'm meeting with directors, producers, studio, executives, I do kind of understand sometimes like their lack of understanding, because I was there once too. I've come a long way.
Yep.
But that's anyway, that shaped everything about who I am today.
That's awesome. That's a great perspective. That was, what do you say, 25 years ago. And it is a journey, because even Native people themselves have to go on a journey to discover who they really are, what their identity really is. So it's only natural that we expect people who aren't Native to do the same, especially if they only read about us or seen us in movies and period pieces. Got to have some empathy. Some of it is like the ignorance, but a lot of it is empathy of just like, if they don't understand fully the first time, like I can't fault them, give them a little bit of rope. But I think that's important for you to say, because you have a daughter now who's in the industry and has to go, up against some of those maybe misunderstandings of who Native people are. And, your husband has seen that, and you've heard those firsthand, seen those firsthand. But before we start talking about that, I want to give Stacey Rice a chance to introduce herself.
Hello, I'm Stacey, and I'm Tuscarora, and I work with Angelique at Midthunder Casting Associate.
Awesome. Thank you. I wanted to bring, Angelique wanted to bring Stacey on because she listens to the show and she works with her. And I thought it was like, hey, great. Yeah, it's more the merrier. I think it'd be good to have diverse perspectives on this one. So you all recently were working on Reservation Dogs. And that's like an all indigenous cast, all indigenous writers room, all indigenous, it's led by Sterlin Harjo. And that's exciting for everybody involved. All the audience can't wait for August 9th to get here for FX to roll that show out. For a long time, I've talked to people in the film industry on and off, and they've said it's hard to cast Native talent. That's what I keep hearing. At least that's what they hear, is it's hard to cast Native talent. And I'd like to know, Angelique, how hard is it to cast Native talent?
It is hard. It's a lot of work. I told Stacey, I met Stacey through the casting society. It put us together because she is Native, and they know of my work and my specialty. And I love Stacey's been with me now for I would say a year that we've been working together. She's actually a co-casting director with me on a project that we're working on right now. And I love having it means a lot to me that Stacey's a part of the team as a Native voice in the casting process. I mean, I have a perspective from 25 years, like I just said, of being in the community, but it's not the same as I feel like it's just an organic, it's like an intangible, organic, and inherent perspective that Stacey brings that I love. But anyway, when Stacey came aboard, I told her it's 5 times as much work and not as much money sometimes, but it is more rewarding. I mean, I feel like personally, before I kind of honed in on Native casting and I was just working as a casting director, it was a job and it was a fun job and I enjoyed it. But when I kind of redirected my focus to Native casting, it became a calling.
That's great.
I mean, just well, for example, to answer your question about Reservation Dogs, we went, not Stacey, but this was before Stacey and I had met, but myself and my team at the time went to Oklahoma, spent a couple weeks there with Sterlin. Sterlin is no showrunner has ever done this. He showed up every minute of every day at every single casting call. We had casting calls all over the state of Oklahoma. Cool. We went into all these, he's like, we got to go to Okmulgee. We got to go out to Seminole. We got to go. I'm like, okay, where are we going? Where are we going? And we were literally all over the map. And he showed up with his guitar and a bunch of bags of chips every single day. And we're just giving out chips to hundreds of Indian kids. And it was it was incredible. I mean, I had done that type of thing before, but not with a showrunner and not with someone who had so much love and passion for his community. And I gotta tell you, I gotta give it to Sterlin because, the productions want to go to places with film incentives. And Sterlin was like, we got to do this in Oklahoma.
Wow.
And there's the natives in Oklahoma are different from the natives anywhere else. I mean, it had to be done there because it wouldn't have been the same show. There's 4 series regular lead, the 4 kids that are the leads. Of those kids, one of them we did find at one of our open casting calls, no experience, I mean, and now he's
that's
a
amazing
regular on an FX series. I
that's
mean,
amazing.
That is that when and I prayed.
That's like the stuff of legend, Hey, they came to my reservation and I showed up and now I'm a TV star,
And
no.
not just and not just him. I can't wait for you to see the show. I almost wish we were doing this right now and 2 weeks from now.
Dang
because
it.
when you see the show, well, we can come back another time too.
Yeah.
But all these kids that you see, there's so many kids, Elva, Jude, Keeland, Daniel. There's like all these kids that we found at these casting calls
Mm-hmm.
that aren't like the leads, but that are in the show, and they're in the show.
That's so cool.
Like the whole time, like they're recurring characters. So I would say like almost half of the characters are kids from the reservation. And I tell you what, like, I'm such a believer, and I literally, like, I prayed to God before I went to Oklahoma, and I was like, God, if you can use me and use this experience to change the lives and create opportunities in these communities, this is what I'm here for.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just the kids in front of the camera, but it's like, if you walked onto that set, you will see so many Native faces in every position, in every department.
Man.
And I mean, that was like Sterlin from day one. He was like, we're doing something like yes, we're making a TV show and it's going to be totally bomb, which it is.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also like, it changed the community and created opportunities. And that's when I like get excited. And like, that's what I was saying, like it turns from like a job to a calling. Because
That's
it's easy
great.
to give somebody a job who's like, oh, you're a electrician and we're gonna hire you for this. But it's so different to like, create opportunity where there wasn't an opportunity before.
Yeah.
Especially when you talk about people who don't always have opportunities, people in communities who don't always have that. So
that sounds like such a transformative experience for everybody involved. Even no matter how small of a touch point you had with that project, it sounds like, I had an interview with Riker Six Killer, who's like a stuntman, but also works for Buffalo Nickel Creative. And it just sounds like there was like this energy around that entire show the entire time it was filming. And it sounds like all the way to casting that Sterlin just did something different that like has never been done, and it sounds like so much fun.
yeah.
And I think it's so it makes me want to see the show even more, but it's so encouraging to hear someone like Sterlin at the helm, for someone to take note of like, this is how you cast Native talent. Because when they see how good the show is, and I have 100% faith in your casting ability, that you casted freaking amazing people, and when they see like, how the hell did they get these people in this show, and they you hear that story about how Sterlin had to go do it, go out and get those Native people. I have another example of that. I'm sure you're familiar with this one, but in a 2018 movie, The Grizzlies, directed by Miranda de Poncier, same thing in a way, where Stacey McDonald is from the community in Kugluktuk where they filmed the movie that's based on the actual Grizzlies. And it was the same thing, where they went and scoured the entire First Nation, the entire Canada, basically all of Canada, to find these people. And that's how like Anna Lam got her start, and eventually she was in Trickster later. And I think it's just amazing that you have people like you who are just like, I don't know the answer, you tell me, you guide me, I trust you. Finding those people like Sterlin and Stacey Arglock McDonald that are willing to like say, you trust me, I'm gonna go do it right, and I'm gonna go get it done, and I'm gonna show you where all the talent is, because I know where the talent is. It's like they have the treasure map, and like someone's gonna finally listen to them and like take them to where they need to go. That's so exciting. What was it like to work really with from start to finish? How was that so different to like do you normally come across that much new talent when you're casting?
I do, because I feel like it's kind of something that I'm tapped to do quite a bit. I mean, Stacey and I just Stacey was a co-casting director with me on another show where she ended up really taking the reins on a lot of the casting that we just did, with almost an entirely Navajo cast where the two leads were kids.
Wow.
And it was like a coming of age story about a Navajo boy who goes back to the reservation and kind of is self discovery. And we actually, it was, I want to say it's always scary when you take the job and you go, gosh, I got to do this filmmaker right. The writer director's Navajo, and it's a big opportunity for him to get to make this feature film. and you go like, well, I want to do this right, you know, and we have to find these Navajo kids. We want them to be Navajo because it's a Navajo story. You know what I mean? And yeah, we did. You know, and I think he was more nervous than we were. And I said, look, it's not like we've never not done it, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I do feel like it is something that we're tapped to do a lot. I mean, fortunately, I've been in it so long, like for Reservation Dogs, I had auditioned all those kids before, Paulina, DeFaro, and certainly Devery. I mean, Devery, I've been following her career for years.
Right.
But you know, but that's what we do. We, you know, and like these kids that we just cast in this movie that I just mentioned, we'll be following them. They're non-act, you know, I mean, I don't know if I would say non-actors, but they're young. I mean, you know, you know, so when we'll be following them. So that's like the exciting thing for me too, is to like follow somebody. I get an audition tape from someone and they stand out, and I will kind of continue to nurture their career, follow their career, audition them every chance I get, you know. So it was I think almost like equally satisfying for me to get to cast those guys.
That's awesome.
As it was for them to play those roles, because I know how exciting that type of thing is, and I know how great like FX is to work for.
That's amazing. So are you like known in the industry? I know I'm asking a leading question because I know the answer, but like you're known in the industry as a native caster, you as someone who's like has an eye for native talent, but also authentic native talent. The rest of the industry, why are there still instances where they just like get it way wrong? Like I when I see your work, I'm like, oh wow, Rutherford Falls, you know, Res Dogs, they hit it right on the head. But then there's still movies that come out and TV that comes out. Well, more movies, but they just completely miss the mark. They're still kind of pushing those old stereotypes and kind of really missing the representation, and still doing period pieces, sticking to just that. Don't want to tell like stories that are like natives today.
Well, I think that there's a lot involved in that. I mean, I think like with Reservation Dogs and Rutherford Falls, you know, when you have indigenous storytellers, you know, on Rutherford Falls, Sierra, it was, you know, one of the showrunners, and she brought me on to consult with the casting department. So we all collaborated together because everyone wanted to do the best job. Obviously with Res Dogs, I mean, we have Sterlin at the helm of the whole, you know, and Taika as well, where, you know, it's a priority, you know, representation is a priority. Other shows, you know, if they don't have someone that's indigenous in a key position, representation may not be at the forefront of their mind. Also, you know, I think that a lot of times they just don't know. You talk about representation, they don't exactly know what that means. And I feel like when I'm working with non-native filmmakers, we always have to, you know, start with a conversation about what does it even mean to be native. And a lot of times, like they feel, you know, I mean, they're like, well, what about this? What about that? Like, as like, there's all this kind of gray area at times, but also there's kind of not. I mean, the way I see it, it's like, I'm half Asian. It's like I'm half Thai. I was born in Thailand. So I'm like, well, look, I can say that I'm Asian. I can point to Thailand, the country, you know, and the same with, you know, with native peoples. It's not like this random ambiguous thing, you know, like when we talked, you know, Stacey says I'm Tuscarora and Seneca, you're from somewhere. So it's like, that's a kind of like, I have to start kind of at like a base level, having these base level conversations with filmmakers about, you know, and they're talking about, well, we want to have the actors speak this native language and nobody knows it. And I'm like, no, not nobody knows it. Okay. People do. There are people who are talking it. The people that you're representing are actually, they're actually that thing, and it's still alive, and it's a real thing that you're doing here. So It's a lot to unpack, but I think it just starts with people who are learning.
So this is a question for both of you. If you weren't in that room to be that kind of like really checks and balances and like, hey, you're going outside the guardrails now, like there is someone that exists that knows that, because it's still an active language, it's still an alive language. There's hundreds, thousands of people, some cases it might not be, but like Navajo, for example, thousands of native speakers. You can find people that do that. Just because no one that speaks the language doesn't mean it doesn't exist. That idea that natives, just because we're not in the forefront, we don't exist, really pushes that, people saying like, oh, we're not a monolith. When people say that, it's like, really, there's over 560 different native nations, and there's so much nuance with every single one of those. To just say we're all native kind of like waters it down a little bit. Stacey, with you being from two native nations, how do you feel when people think like, oh, they're just Lakota or they're just Navajo? Like, do people understand like the mixed race like aspect at all when it comes to really understanding Native people?
Yeah, you mean from like the studio side of
Yeah,
it, or?
yeah, studio side of it. Yeah.
Mhm. I do, to Angelique's point, think that there is a lack of education in general, a lack of understanding and knowing, because, the Native American culture has been removed to reservations and
Mm-hmm.
reserves. It's not out there, I mean, people should educate themselves and learn, of course, but I just do think that there is just a lack of understanding of what that means. And I've seen on shows, not with Angelique, where there's been a native role, and we're getting like, they're accepting tapes from people that are Hispanic or
Mm-hmm.
like Latin and presenting those as options all the way up to the studio.
For
And
native roles.
right, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because they look native, whatever
Mm-hmm.
they think that means. Like, I just think the education and the understanding behind it is lacking.
So where do you think that responsibility? Yeah, we can say they should educate themselves, but for a lot of times, if you think Native people are one thing, like where do you think they start? Or I guess to get it to educate themselves on like who Native people are, what they should start understanding. Like where do you think they should start?
Well, hiring people like Angelique and I to
Hmm.
inform them, and getting, a native.
Somebody who's already done the work and understands.
Right, yeah, and,
Hmm.
yeah, it starts with casting, it starts with having consultants on shows, with specific tribes. If, like Angelique just said, the film that we did, with the Navajo director, writer, he was already immersed in the community. So right there's, there's so much nuance within each, tribal affiliation, right? It's hard to know everything, but I think it just starts there with the representation, hiring people from, particular tribes, that, as it relates to the storytelling or the actors. And um I don't know. I think.
When you're casting Native talent, like what's more important, like talent or closeness to like represent like Native representation? And obviously it's a sliding scale, of course, but like where do you all lie on that? I'm sure it's different for both of you.
If I may, I would say, Angelique and I are just so passionate about getting the authenticity right first and foremost. I think that's like, and Angelique, feel free to jump in if you, disagree, but I think we try and we strive to get it right and do it
Mm-hmm.
accurately. And of course, the acting matters. You have to be able to, the acting has to be there. You have to be able to perform the job of the actor as well. So it's a dance. It's a balance. And, but I would say that first and foremost, we look at the specific tribe, we audition non-actors, we really try
Oh,
our
that's
best.
great. That's great to hear. What about you, Angelique?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is like Stacey said, it's a balance, it's a dance. I mean, you have to have both, in my opinion. Obviously, I mean, you have the talent has to be there, because if someone isn't performing at the level that especially when you're talking about studios and television networks, if someone, you're on screen with great actors, right? So it's like we have to find people that are equally talented, that aren't, otherwise it's going to pull you out of the scene if someone's a bad actor.
Right.
So we're always looking for that talent. I think the thing about Stacey and I is that we look in the Native communities. So we do go to the talent agencies, we do audition actors, but we dig deep, and we kind of are relentless about it, and we really don't give up on the Native communities. So it's time consuming, and it's not easy. It's a lot of work, but it's important to us. And I think, the filmmakers that do hire us, that's what they want. They want to do it right. They want, they want to have a film that they're going to be proud of the representation that they're putting forward. So yeah.
And people don't want to be criticized too. Like they want to accurately represent the community. They want people to be proud. If you have Navajo people in that, you want Navajo people to say like, "Oh man, this is a great freaking representation of our people."
Exactly. And studios and television networks don't want the opposite of that. I was I'm often asked about, well, like they'll come to us, Stacey and I, and say, well, is this going to be offensive, or is this going to make anyone upset?
Oh man.
Because they don't want, they are the studios and the networks, I have to give them credit. Like they really are, they care now. And it's it's the past 5 to 10 years, we've come a long way.
I can tell you, I from just a fan, viewer, lover of movies, I can see that. It's like we're at all-time highs right now, and it's only going to get higher based on the tidal wave of work that's coming. And as more people see these new stories that they've never seen before, they're going to want more. And I think it's grossly unfair that to put you two on the spot, though. It's like, oh, you're the only Indian I know, so I'm going to ask you all the Indian questions. It's like you ask me about Dakota Access Pipeline when I'm Navajo and I know just as much as you, but you want my opinion on the whole thing. It's like that's so unfair. And I think you all being in a position where you're renowned and you're looked to as the Native, you're one of the Native casting agencies where it's like, hey, they know how to find Native talent. That just feels like so much pressure, an unfair amount of pressure. Do you feel that at all from Native communities and like just other I guess studios to get it right?
Well, I kind of feel like it's like, what is that thing that the Spider-Man thing with great
power comes great responsibility.
responsibility. I mean, that's personally how I feel. Like, as I've worked my way up, I feel that responsibility, yes, but I wear it like a badge of honor. Like, I mean, and it's like sometimes I lose sleep about it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, I gotta do this right,
Man, that's awesome.
It can be challenging because ultimately I don't have the last word. You know what I mean? I don't. All we can do is we can do our best. But at the end of the day, the director, the producers, the network, the studios, they're going to pick who they pick. So, all that Stacey and I can do is we can present them with the best options. This is what we believe are the best options. And more importantly, here's why we feel that they're the best options. And then and then they'll make their own decisions. But I think like, I just have to go back to the fact that like the studios and the networks and the producers that are hiring us, they do care and they do want to do the right thing. And I think that's where we've really seen this switch. And yes, it's a big responsibility. It's a big responsibility for us. It's also a big responsibility for the studios and the networks that are telling Native stories, to do the right thing.
Yeah, and just to Angelique's point, it is a huge responsibility, but it's also a privilege. Like I just feel so, honored to be able to help, uplift a community and like accurately portray them on the screen and have a voice, like have a seat at the table, be able to give your opinion. And like Angelique said, this is why, educate them.
I can tell you, so in my limited, supervision management experience in my day-to-day job, coaching somebody, seeing potential and watching them live up to that potential, like gives me the greatest high that, I can ever achieve. Seeing potential, seeing people develop into that. And I feel like you all get to do that for a living. Like, what does that feel like to find some native off the street that never would have otherwise probably got into acting had they not come across your casting call? Like, what does that feel like?
I mean, to me, it's incredible. Like I said, it's like, that's what makes all the long hours, the nights that I worked until midnight and got up at 5, 6 in the morning and went back to work, just doing going the extra mile. That's what makes it all worthwhile. I mean, like on Reservation Dogs, this girl, Elva, she walked in the room and we were like, there's something special about her. And since then she's gone on to we've cast her in this, we've cast her in that, and you'll start seeing her. And it's
That's
just
amazing.
like, it's, it's just, it is like Stacey said, it feels like a privilege. It's so rewarding. It's, I can't imagine not doing this as a casting director now. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I think it's important for you to describe that, kind of how that process goes for the listeners, of like, you're just laying it out, you're setting the table, you're laying out the buffet, whatever analogy you want to use, and they have to decide what goes on their plate. But really, you're just giving them the best available options that you can provide, that you can find, given your expertise and your ability to find these people. So sometimes it's not on the casting agency, because you're like, we gave them the best possible options, but they still wanted their guy or girl,
Well, that's what I was going to say too, is like on the flip side of that's like the bright side. And on the flip side of that coin is like, sometimes it doesn't go our way. I mean, everyone's doing their best, but sometimes they just want to go with, well, this name actor is more popular. This person has more credits or more experience. Right. And yes, they're, we don't, know exactly where they're from or whatever, but we really want to cast them. And that's, and there's nothing we can do at that point, because, I understand the bottom line is that this is a money-making venture. And if they want to put their money on somebody who has more experience and they know is going to do a good job in the professional realm, we've come to the table and we've done our best, and we still wish them the best. It's just sometimes it is a little disappointing for us, but I think when they do go in that direction, just keeping in mind that it is a money-making venture, that there is an indigenous audience that is going to potentially push back as well. And we do we do inform them of that, and we try to just we try to arm them with as much information and education as we can about these are the pros and cons of hiring each person. Here are these potential options where you could get pushback from the community, but also here's the options where we know that the community will embrace these particular people for whatever reason, and we think that they're all so talented. So
I want to ask one more question, and then I want to get into kind of like a nitty-gritty question, but this is more of a curiosity. Like, what makes how do you know? What is that? I mean, it's kind of like I'm asking a scout, like, how do you spot talent? But like, for a native kid, actor, adult, I don't know what they look like. How do you know, especially someone that has no experience, when other people like have been professionally trained and they still don't make the cut? But how do you know, like, specifically with someone that has no experience, like what does talent look like?
Well, I think that it's something that it can be trained, but it can also be inherent. And that's what we see with like a lot of these young people. There's just people that are just naturals, that are comfortable in their skin, and you see it like with little kids too, right? Like kids who like you'll see a kid singing the national anthem. It's like 7 years old. And you're like, how did the parents know, or the kid, they just started singing and it was like amazing. And so it was nurtured, and it's kind of, you get that with people too. It's like people who just have something about them, whether it's an ability to connect with their emotions, whether it's just being comfortable to wear their heart on their sleeve, whether it's being open to connecting with another person in the room, whether they have an ability to pretend, whatever it is, it when you see it. Just like when you hear a singer that sings good and you
just see it.
you just identify it. It's just something that you can just identify it, but it also can be trained, like singing. I think it's similar to like singing is like something I would parallel it with.
That's a good, but also much like singing, you either got it or you don't sometimes. Unfortunately, and I can't sing to save my life. I think it's interesting to think, you hear stories like Slade and Peltier and Indian Horse, where it's like, we just wanted a kid that could play hockey and be convincing on skates. And he turned out to be an amazing, amazing actor. And he had a flyer stuffed in his hockey bag. And had it not been for that, he never would have been discovered. And I think that's amazing that you all are like a part of stuff like that you change people's lives, their entire trajectory. Stacey, you're close to the ground with Angelique. Like, what is that like? Like, what do those testimonies sound like for people? Do they ever come back to you of like, you changed my life, or, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the most rewarding thing. Like the little girl that we just cast, she's lives on the Navajo reservation, and she was so cute. We were on Zoom because of COVID, and we were doing like a director meeting, and she goes, "Can I take a picture?" And so we all smiled on Zoom, and she got it. And she was like, during the meeting, our director was just talking to her to like get her personality, like to know her personality better, and was like, "What do you like to do?" And blah, blah, blah. And she's like, "I love acting and I want to be an actress when I grow up." And, he's like, "You are an actress." And she ended up getting the job, and she's incredible. We can't wait for the world to meet this girl. Can we say her name? Charlie Hogan. I feel like she's going to be somebody someday.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah, and on Reservation Dogs, Angelique was it Elva that you cast, and she didn't have a talent agent, and now she has an agent, and we send her auditions for everything that she's right for. I feel like
we flew her out to LA for Rutherford Falls.
No kidding.
And she's doing that other thing that we were casting.
Yeah.
I love how casting's so cryptic. You guys can't see anything. I appreciate all the kernels that you're offering, though. This is great. I mean, it's just good to know, like, from behind the scenes, that more's coming and more new faces are coming. We're going to see more. I think the fear is that my fear as a fan, as a viewer, as a person who runs this podcast, that we're like, it just feels too good to be true, that like, I'm going to wake up one day and the rug's going to be pulled out from under us and they're like, "Oh, we were just kidding." And that's always a possibility. Corrections always happen and stuff in the markets. Different stuff becomes profitable, but it's so exciting to hear like all of this happening, and that you all are like have a mission to discover new talent. That's like what wakes you up in the morning. That's what makes it all worth it, and that's so exciting. It's a little frustrating though at the like director producer level that they ultimately have the final say, and this is where I kind of want to round things out is talk about the Pretendians controversy. And I don't want to get anybody in trouble or get anybody, to step on anybody's toes. So I'll do the bad talking. But when it comes to people like Kelsey Aspel and people like Johnny Depp, even Val Kilmer at some point in his career, when he was doing Thunderheart, there was a point when he started like, I got a little bit of Indian in me. And that became the story, and it's like Kelsey Aspel claimed to be part of the Eastern Band, the Cherokee Nation, and then just claimed it out of nowhere. And the Eastern Band of Cherokee Nation says, we have no record of her. We have no lineage of her, of where she claims, where she comes from. We have no idea who this person is, and still gets hired in, Taylor Sheridan work. And so it's frustrating to see that, because it takes away from those opportunities that you're describing, where you have you have talent just waiting to be found. You have a gold mine in the reservations, on the Native nations. There are people waiting to be discovered, like the girl you mentioned, but they're not going to get their at-bats because directors and producers are like, no, we got our comfort level of people that we know are good to work with, that we like. And sometimes it is just that popularity contest of like, it's who you know. But it's unfortunate when they're representing people on screen that should be accurately represented and have a long history of being misrepresented, and just continuing that frustration out of comfort because they're like, no, we like working with this person better. Thank you for all your hard work, Angelique and Stacey. Thank you for your long nights, but we want to deal with this person. It's close enough for us. They look close enough. So when you're casting, and I've heard this out there, it's like you can't ask people where they're from, or you can't ask them how much Indian are you, or like how native are you. Is that true? I've just heard that.
Yes, that's true. I mean, there is a guild that protects actors, and they have rules, and so we're not allowed to ask what someone is, or how much of what someone is. So it's really, the onus is on the actor to be honest. I think that it is upsetting to me to see opportunity taken away from an already underrepresented, you know, communities, or to take opportunities away from people who deserve it. But so I think, I was having this conversation the other day with another organization actually, and they were talking about, it's really coming out of the communities now, where the communities are raising their voices and putting pressure on the studios and on the networks to do it right, because it's hard. I mean, a lot of times the actors, like the first show when I met my husband, I didn't know better. I mean, and it was the 90s. It was before the internet.
That's 25 years ago too. Like we're
yeah, there's no internet. Like, now it's like, come on, people know better, and people are learning. It's a learning process. But I think, but it's still like, I do, like in my perfect world, every actor would be honest about what they are. And the thing is that there are plenty of opportunities I believe that there's plenty of opportunity for everyone. If you're honest about who you are and what you are, the opportunities will match up. You don't just say you're something you're not. It just doesn't have to happen that way. But when it does happen that way, I think that the communities are pushing back and shining a negative light on those filmmakers who are making irresponsible choices. And I think no filmmaker, and certainly no studio, no network, wants to do something that's going to be offensive, or end up with a negative response, because at the end of the day, it is a money-making venture, right? No one wants their sponsorships pulled, and no one wants it, their advertising pulled. So that might be one incentive, but I think also people are just coming out of 2020 and BLM and the BIPOC movement. It's like people are really like understanding, I think people are understanding, and they are like, they care. It feels like people care more. And I totally experienced that on Reservation Dogs, which was ahead. We started prepping that in 2019.
Wow.
We were planning to shoot. We were actually in prep in March of 2020. And then,
oh gosh, right when it happened.
Yeah, I was like working on a Friday, and then Sterlin called me on Sunday, like, I hope you didn't work over the weekend. No one's working tomorrow.
Oh my God.
But so that one was a little bit ahead of the time, but I think like that show in particular is going to be particularly groundbreaking, because it was like just an amazing thing where FX was like, you guys do your thing.
Wow.
And they trusted Sterlin, they trusted Taika, they trusted me, all of us. And the producers were super supportive. And wait till you see it. It's like, at first I was like, who's going to watch this? Freaking everybody's going to watch it.
That's amazing.
It's funny. It's like, it goes past like just like native humor. It's just like, this stuff is funny. There's stuff that is like, there's serious content that it's like, but it's subject matter that touches everyone who's a human, that has a heart, that has any sort of lived experience, that has loved ones. It's universal, it transcends. And I think that like networks and studios and financiers are going to see that, like, when you just tell stories with heart and with good quality writing and good quality talent in every department, it's going to do well. So I think, like, that's where I see, like, the future going. That's my hope.
It's frustrating because this is people's livelihood. So some people that maybe see an opportunity to jumpstart their career, extend their career, the checking the box is an opportunity, and it's not checked. And especially when it comes out that, hey, the community denies them, it's on the showrunners to do that. You see instances like, Yellowstone, are like, well, we'll just keep doing what we're doing. But then there's other instances where they overcorrect, and it's like, no, you went too far, like Trickster. You didn't need to cancel the whole fucking show. Like, geez, it was just the showrunner. All you got to do is change the showrunner. Everything else is perfect, You got Eden Robinson. You have an indigenous story, an indigenous novel series that you can run with. You have indigenous actors already casted that were brand new, and all you had to do was swap it out with somebody else. And instead, they just didn't want any of the backlash that Angelique just mentioned. That backlash is terrifying because that could potentially affect not just the bottom line for this project, but future bottom lines. And I'm sure executives were just, like, I don't even want to even try to, tread, wade into these waters. I don't know what the current's like. Just pull the plug. And it's so unfortunate because we were denied opportunity of seeing a season 2, and people were so excited to see season 2. So, Stacey, what do you think about that? Being, Angelique knows from experience from working in the industry for 25 years. You have a perspective that's from a Native woman. Like, what does that feel like to see other casting agencies or see other, instances where, people are questionable at best, or you just know people are just claiming Native heritage just for a leg up?
Right. I think that it is insulting, and it takes away an opportunity for an actual Native Indigenous actor to represent. And I think it's harmful, What does that do to the psyche to see not only like Native representation, like not accurate, or to see it done correctly and accurately? It's uplifting. It's to see yourself in the media like that. That's huge.
I don't recall who did a tweet. It was an African American actor that said, we don't have enough studies on exactly what you're talking about, on lack of representation, on seeing misrepresentation and what that role that plays on your psyche. Children, I can tell you, I talked about it in my podcast, but I'll tell you too personally that I thought I was a lame Indian. Like, I didn't think I was a cool Indian because I didn't have long hair. We didn't ride horses. We didn't shoot bow and arrows. Like Navajos, we just traditionally don't do that kind of thing. But that's all you saw on TV. And anytime you saw close to accurate representation, it was all the res. It was like, and it was the worst parts of the res. It was alcoholism. It was impoverished communities. It was lack of running water, lack of electricity. But that's all I saw. And thankfully I had, positive role models in my life to be able to not make that about me. But man, some people, movies is what they escape to, and that's all they have. And it's so unfortunate that could frame someone's mindset. They could look at that and be like, that's who I am. That's all I can be. And it's so unfortunate.
Absolutely. It's damaging, and it's harmful. And I think that that's where, I would hope that someday it's not only just like, like a Native person could play just a character. Why do they have to be? They could just be whatever, the neighbor. They don't have to be like this Native stereotype. And it's also interesting to me, I don't see any other ethnicities, unless you guys think differently on this. Like, if you're African American, like claiming like I'm clearly not African American. Would I ever go and like claim that? I don't know. That's just
no. You don't look like a Rachel Dolezal to me. I think you're you're in the clear. I think what's frustrating is to know that exists, and that pain is going to continue for at least a short while. I don't know how long it's to take the course correct, but I know for me, if my son wanted to get into acting, he's 2, he's going to have long hair. He has long hair. If I were to see him like give it us all, and people are like, oh, he's great, he's great. And then you go and see the movie, you see someone who isn't Native. I know as a parent, I would be furious and I would feel cheated. And it was like, who the fuck are you to tell me like my kid wasn't Native enough for this role? You would start going down that spiral of just like, what did I do as a parent to not set them up for success? Like, it's not just the kid that's affected, and Angelique, I saw you go off mute. Go right ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, that's exactly the what I lose sleep about at night too, about doing it right, because it's not just the one actor who didn't get the job, it's the whole community. It's an entire peoples as a whole. Like, a misrepresentation says to them, potentially, maybe it says to them, you're not good enough, or you're invisible to me. And I have family, I have kids, I have, I have community. It's important to me as a person. But I think, because I am a part of these communities and these families and these conversations, like just saying, it's like, and what Stacey said, like, what does it do to the psyche of not just individuals, but the whole communities, and to the generations, the younger generations watching, it's just it's a way bigger issue, I think, than sometimes what the networks and the studios even understand. So these are exactly the conversations that Stacey and I have with the decision makers, and we hope that we bring like a sincerity and a passion to our projects that make them want to do the right thing for the greater cause.
What sucks too is, like, let's say the director and producer go with their guy or gal, their person that they want to cast, and they sent you to do all this labor. You potentially made promises. You intentionally or unintentionally made promises to that community. And when that thing rolls out, that piece rolls out, you basically potentially shut a door for who knows how long on that potential talent pool, because they don't trust you. Even if you weren't the one directly responsible, even if you laid out the buffet for them, you gave them the best possible list of talent, and the director and producer were like, no, we want to go with Kelsey Aspill or whoever, somebody who is just not up to snuff, who's claiming indigenous heritage that doesn't have it. We want to go with our Elizabeth Warren because that's who we're comfortable with. And that entire community is just like, well, next time we see Midthunder Casting come through, I'm not sending my kid to that. I don't trust them, even though that wasn't your call.
Exactly. And I worked on a show, it's been like 10 years now. I worked on a show that had a lot of Native roles and Native storylines, no Native writers, no Native, no one above the line really that was Native at all. And after one season, I ended up walking away from the show. All of the casting department was entirely white, except for me and the person that I brought on with me. And it was so frustrating through the whole season that I kept offering them Native talent and having these types of conversations 10 years ago. And they wouldn't, they didn't get it, but I felt like they weren't listening, and I felt like they didn't care. And I left the show. The show went on for 6 more years without me. No one will ever know that I left the show, and that I was trying to uphold my integrity, but it was also so frustrating, that my voice wasn't heard, and that I felt like the only one that cared. But I couldn't have my name attached to it. For that reason. And I have been, and but that's the type of thing that's been my lived experience to build my reputation and my integrity, so that doesn't happen. It still does happen, but not as often.
Yeah, I think there's even a gross misunderstanding of like Natives and like a few select animals are the only people that are measured in blood quantum. I can't remember who exactly, but I think that's a category on its own. Like people are like, oh, we don't do that to any other race. It's like, well, Native people aren't like any other race in our relationship with this particular country. And it's so difficult to get people to understand that, to say like, we're different, especially in an age where being inclusive is the talk of every conversation. We want that to be paramount, and people are like, for Natives to say, no, but we're different. So yeah, you and everybody else is different. It's like, no, we're actually different. This is actually very different than everything that you're working with. And I think that's why it's awesome that you have a company like Midthunder Casting that one is trusted, that people are like, okay, we'll go to you for this because it's like they're the best at this. But I think it goes to organizations like yours. It requires that. But I think what you brought up earlier is it requires the communities to also call foul, because that's what's going to affect the bottom line.
It really is. And I'm so glad that you have this show and that we're having this conversation, because like what you said, like if my kid tried out for something and a non-native got the role representing a Navajo, I would feel bad as a parent. Everyone who has those types of feelings needs to use their voice, because ultimately that's what's going to create the change, is the people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in the age of social media, in the age of like everybody has a platform, like we really need to we really need to call foul. And because we can't rely on you, you could potentially be affecting your livelihood, you know? I mean, you're doing the right thing, you're going to do the right thing, but it's like we can't just really say like, oh, they Midthunder Casting has it covered, you know, the producers, directors, they got it covered. Like we need to really help govern. You know, Oscars So White, that movement helped a lot. You know, the Hollywood Diversity Report, putting real statistics behind the industry and saying like, okay, let's look at the mirror. It's no longer a one-way mirror. Let's see what we actually see, and let's talk about what it should look like. And I think this is a great, I don't know, it's so uplifting for me to hear that, you know, Stacey and Angelique are working on this, and that there's so much talent that they're finding and that they're gonna find, you know. And your daughter Amber Midthunder, I'm excited to just see her and stuff like Ice Road. The Ice Road just came out with Liam Neeson. I mean, it's so crazy to see that. I have a question for you, just as a parent. What is that like to see your kid getting acting roles? Is that, I mean, I assume this is what she wanted to do ever since she was a little girl, but you know, like what is that like to see her live a dream?
Well, it's rewarding. You want your kids to live their dreams, right? So, I mean, yeah, she was into it off and on. And of course, now she's into it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we would have supported her, whatever she wanted to do. And certainly we tried to offer her a lot of opportunity outside of the film industry, you know, as people who work in the industry do. But you know, it was what she wanted to do. And, you know, people always tell me like, you must be so proud of her. She's doing so great. And I am, because I know it's because she works hard. She works really hard. Like the movie she's on right now, she prepped 7 days a week for 4 weeks until they started shooting. 7 days a week for 4 weeks. It's a lot, you know. So I am proud of her. But what I am proud of her too is that she cares about people. She cares about representation. You know, it's not just about being an actor to her. And she's like kind of not even that into like being an actor, in the sense that like she just had to get a publicist for something that she was doing, probably Ice Road, I don't know. And and she was like meeting with different publicists, and she was like, first thing I'm going to tell you, I can't believe I don't know if she will get mad at me for telling the story. And she was like, first thing she was like, first thing I'm going to tell you, she started this with all of her publicist interviews, was like, I don't want to be famous. I'm not here to be famous.
Oh shit.
And she's like, I know that's not what a publicist wants to hear, but she's like, you know, I'm here to represent and do a good job.
That's amazing.
And so what does that look like moving forward, representing me in the public eye? Because that's what I'm here for. Like, you know, she's all about the people if you follow her Instagram. But
that's
yeah,
awesome.
Anyway, I'm just Stacey chatted me, don't say it. I said,
don't
too
say
late.
She's on mute right now, so I saw her trying to. It's okay. No, it's great to hear that humility from people like that. And I think this like younger generation, you know, I'm the millennial, the younger, I don't know what the younger generation is, but they're so active. Like they have so much passion, so much fire, you know, that I feel like skipped a few generations. I think it's so awesome to have people like Amber Midthunder just like out there, just like, I don't want to be famous. I want to represent my people. It's just like, really? That's awesome. Like, oh my gosh, that's so cool.
Yeah, I'm a proud mom.
Good for you.
Me.
Good for you. That's what I wanted to hear. So before we head out, I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming on the show. I think people will appreciate this interview because it's a piece that I've heard from a native costume designer, someone from that side of it, where they're just getting the direction. I've heard from a few actors, a few writers. Actually, I've yet to get a writer, but a few actors, people from behind the scenes, like Riker Six Killer and Natalie Benali, other people that work in the industry. I think I want to get a director at some point and a writer, but this is, and I talked to Sterlin Harjo before in another podcast, and he is just like, I want to end this being like a Sterlin Harjo fan of just like, everybody go watch Res Dogs on August 9th. And I'm positive I can say, just go watch the first episode and I guarantee you'll want the rest of the season, and I think I've talked to so many people that have been involved with the show, and nobody has anything but booming reviews about how it felt on scene, about what the content looks like, and how groundbreaking it's going to be. Dare I say, more so than Rutherford Falls. And I'm just so stoked for this, and I can't wait. And it's on my birthday, August 9th. So it's going to be perfect. It's going to be a great gift to myself. But my gosh, Angelique, thank you so much for what you do, for everything that you do, and just keep fighting the good fight. I really appreciate what you do, and I'm a fan. We didn't get a chance to talk about your stunt work. Maybe that's for another day, but it's just, I hope we can convince your husband too to come on the show someday. He claims to be like a super elder and doesn't know how technology works, but I think we'll wrangle him in.
He claims to be uninteresting, but I don't think that's true either.
No, not at all. I don't think that's true at all. Stacey, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
And happy birthday, Ian. And I am going to also end on the Sterlin Harjo Res Dogs fan club. I think that you're right. I think just at least watch the trailer. You're going to want to watch the pilot. And once you watch that first episode, you can't wait to see what happens.
That's amazing. That's a great plug for the show. Thank you so much, everybody. All right, everyone. Talk to you later.